We frequently get questions about fertilizing during the summer months. So I think sometimes you'll see off-colored leaves on things, plants that are struggling because you get consecutive 100-degree days or an extended dry period, those kinds of things. And I think our initial reaction a lot of times is to grab a bag of fertilizer, because why not? Fertilizer would help anything grow, right? Because that's kind of what it's for. The problem is, though, when plants are under stress, if we throw especially a synthetic fertilizer at them, during a period of time that's already stressful, and then say, hey, grow, that's not necessarily the answer. A lot of times it's, they needed additional water during that time, something we may have learned from that, or the plant's potentially in the wrong location. There's a lot of other things, and we've done a video on why are our plants yellowing. You can take a look at that video. I don't know the order of things, if this one might come up before that one, but that one will be on the channel about why the leaves on our plants are yellowing. Fertilizer is not necessarily the answer. So we fertilize this garden once a year, the whole garden, with an organic fertilizer. Plant tone is generally what we use here in the Raleigh, North Carolina garden. And I probably way underuse, if you read the amount that I'm supposed to use on the back of the package, I'm way under that. I'm really shooting that video to show you how little we fertilize overall. Most of our fertilizer is coming from the fact that we have clay soils, and our red clay soil is actually hard to dig in, hard to work in, but it actually has got a lot of nutrients in it. So as long as we're planting correctly in it, the plants do pretty well. And then we're also using wood chips in our paths and hardwood mulch in our beds. And that stuff's breaking down. Compost as well we'll use out here as well. And all that stuff breaking down, combined with the nutrient availability in that clay, is doing most of the feeding in this garden. So we'll fertilize like February, March-ish, with an organic fertilizer. And then the rest of the year for us here in the Raleigh garden is monitoring. So our annuals in the front garden right now are trying to eat the house. They're growing so fast. We have not refertilized them. But we did add some compost to those beds early in the season, and we fertilized the entire space, again, once with that organic fertilizer. So I'm looking at them and going, well, why would I need to fertilize them, if they're looking like that and they're growing like that? There are some heavier feeding annuals. If you put, if you look up the annuals that we use in this garden, those dwarf zinnias and other things, and celosia and those things, the pentas and lots of other annuals that we use in this garden, they're overall just not heavy feeders. They seem to be perfectly happy in the compost and the prep that we've done and the mulch that's out here in this garden, growing well enough all season long. The one area, though, is that, our containers have a limited amount of nutrient. They don't have that access to that clay in these containers. So we will, midsummer, typically throw some sort of fertilizer at our containers, hanging baskets, maybe the vegetable garden, some of the things that we're trying to get the most out of during the season. We may readdress. But outside of that, I'm not really going to do any summer fertilizing here because, again, I don't want to stress the plants. Now, another conversation would be, is if I was going to fertilize, what would I use? So the difference between, the main difference between organic and synthetic fertilizer is organic fertilizer is going to be made from byproducts from farming, mostly. It might be derived from kelp or some sort of chicken byproduct or whatever, blood meal, a lot of other things that can go into organic fertilizers. These things that are in that fertilizer are they're not ready to feed your plants directly. They have to be broken down and processed a bit by the soil to make those nutrients available for your plants. So there's a delay between putting that organic fertilizer on and it actually starting to work. So I could throw organic fertilizer out here in the garden, and if the plants didn't want the nutrients, they don't have to take them. So I wouldn't probably hurt anything if I came out here and I fertilized this entire garden in the middle of summer with an organic fertilizer, because they're not going to use it. It's basically letting the plants and the beneficial fungi, beneficial bacteria kind of decide whether the plant needs the fertilizer or not. So it's not going to burn your plants to use it. this time of year. Although I don't understand why I would try. You know, I'm not going to try to push these shrubs at the end of the summer. You know, we're more than halfway through the summer here, and the plants are in the process. The days are getting shorter. Plants know the days are getting shorter, so they're heading toward dormancy now, okay? They're heading toward dormancy. So if they're not, I don't want to push them regardless. But then synthetic fertilizer is basically engineered. They're the same nutrients. This plant doesn't care whether the nitrogen is synthetic nitrogen or nitrogen derived from an organic source. It doesn't care. It will take that nitrogen. The synthetic fertilizer, though, was engineered to be readily available. So that plant, it bypasses all the natural system, you know, where normally the combination of leaves and sticks and debris and rock in our soil and animal poop and animal carcasses and everything else that's on the forest floor break down, and those nutrients are made available again to cycle back through the plants, right? That's the normal process. The synthetic fertilizer says, I don't care about the mulch breaking down or any of the other things. I'm just going to feed the plant directly. So it just flips that on its head. It doesn't build soil. It doesn't build it just pushes the plants. So definitely I'm not going to use a synthetic fertilizer. Except on, again, maybe my annuals have slowed down. You know, the things I'm trying to get flowers on through the rest of the summer and into the fall. Maybe my containers are off color. Maybe my vegetable garden has slowed down, hanging baskets, that kind of thing. And if you want to use a synthetic fertilizer, go for it. It's the thing that will feed them the most directly, for sure. But we just continue to use organic fertilizers. We have, you know, have great success with that. The garden looks fantastic. But for me, fertilizing is not, because the label said do this every 10 days. Okay, that's the problem I have with this entire thing, is that I think it teaches people to not be observational in their own garden. And that's the point of this video, is be observational in your own garden. Try to figure out, hey, if the thing's growing and I'm needing to prune it because it's eating something else, that's probably not something that needs fertilizer. The only thing that I would definitely fertilize is if I had a warm season turf right now. If I had zoysia or Bermuda or centipede or St. Augustine, maybe this would be a time of year, because they're actively growing during the heat of the summer. That lawn is. But that's it. My cool season grass, I'm going to wait another 6 or 8 weeks for fescue and bluegrass and those kinds of things before I would fertilize them. But that's my conversation around fertilizing in the middle of summer. I don't think most people there's probably very few things that are going to need to be fertilized. If your containers and your hanging baskets are actually struggling, it may be less about fertilizer and more about the fact that I can see the top of the roots in this container. Look at this right here. This is the top of the soil in that container. See the roots? These plants in that container are wildly root bound. It may have less, the vigor in this Kufia right now slowing down, and this cordyline looking slightly off colored from what it did earlier in the season. This was a very vivid, bright container. Has as much to do with it being root bound as it does any type of fertilizer. It probably needs to just go into a larger container, or a couple things culled out of there, and then a little bit of fertilizer. But again, read the garden a little bit. Before you just go reach for the fertilizer or reach for a spray or reach for anything that somebody's trying to sell you. And analyze, root bound hanging baskets are not going to look good almost no matter how much fertilizer you throw at them, because you can't water them enough to keep them in good shape. So there you go. There's some thoughts around summer fertilizing, the types of fertilizer you might use in the garden. And just to let you know how little fertilizer we actually use in this garden. Our fertilizer is mulch. And we're trying to keep the ground covered all the time and keep the natural cycle of what happens in the wooded areas, which is things drop on the ground and they break down, and that's what feeds your plants. That's the natural way this is supposed to go. We shouldn't need, unless you're in a special case and you're in an area that has no phosphorus or boron or something, like you're missing something in your soil, that may be different. But in an area that has most of the nutrients available in some amount in the soil, we shouldn't need additional fertilizers as much as people are trying to sell them to us. Thanks for watching.